Okay. Should be going live soon. Let me pull up the site. Okay. I'm showing we're good to go, RC.
And I'm just checking. I'll let you know when it shows up.
Okay. Got one person trickle in.
I'm not showing it yet. Search my page.
Okay. Silent Warriors in.
There it is.
Perfect. Perfect. Okay. RC, did you want to tackle your news items first before we get into like audience questions and stuff?
Yeah, before we get into the two better items that you have to discuss, and just going through, I see Silent Warrior's question out there or comment. It's going to be YouTube every time that we can. If something goes wrong with YouTube or whatever with YouTube, especially in the season in a hurry, I've got everything set up easy to do for Twitch, but YouTube is going to try to be our home because we have more controls over it into the future of things we can do. So we're still getting used to it ourselves. So, but let's get on to football stuff. I just have three quick notes. There is like dead silence going on right now in my world for football. Usually I'm getting all kinds of texts and emails and phone calls and everything about somebody saw this, a source saw that, somebody ran into somebody at the deli, somebody ran into somebody at a restaurant. Like I get all kinds of little tidbits that may or may not be true. And then fantasy questions and everything under the sun all day long, except for the middle of July. Everybody goes on vacation at the same time. The players are usually not around the facilities. The writers are off. The beat writers are off. So next week it'll all be in high gear. But for the last week or so, it's been very dry on any type of cool inside information. So I come to this show without any real bombshells to drop. I have three notes for the show. Two of them pertaining to wide receiver trades that are kicking around in the news. It's about the only thing that I see going on in the news lately is Davante Adams being traded to the Jets, which I addressed that in RC notes today and did a rewind report on Davante, but I don't know why everybody's insisting he's going to the Jets and that he wants to be traded. He absolutely does not want to be traded. He might be traded before the trade deadline if the Raiders go sideways because he's got a contract issue that's going to come up next offseason. He's going to be his deal is for way too much money. It's like $40 million just for next season alone, but they could cut him or move him and eat 15 million instead of paying him 40 something. So if the Raiders are terrible and they're rebuilding, then maybe Davante would get traded at the trade deadline. Short of that, the Raiders think they're going to win the AFC West. The Raiders are coming off a high at the end of last season. Davante Adams likes playing for Antonio Pierce. I think he likes trying to work with Aiden O'Connell. I think there's a vibe there that there's a vibe, but I think it's going to be a bubble that's going to get burst. But until it gets burst, Devontae Adams loves being in Las Vegas, and they think that they're going to do some damage in the AFC West. So I don't buy any of this Devontae Adams wants to be traded stuff. The Brandon Ayuk trade situation is a little different in that now he came out in the last 24 hours or so saying he wants to be traded. That's not really breaking news or big news. The 49ers have basically said, go ahead and go see if you can find a trade. So either nobody's really lined up to get him, or they would have gotten him by now if they made a big time offer, or there's no real market for Brandon Ayuk. Not because of the talent, not because of the wide receiver, but because of how much, if he's going to get traded, that team that's receiving him in trade is only going to trade for him and giving him a new deal at the same time. So they're the Washington Commanders, let's say, because they're the team most mentioned in a deal scenario, are not going to give a number one draft pick for Brandon Ayuk, because the second they make that trade, they also will agree to a 5-year, $100-some-odd million deal. So he's so expensive that, and he's not Justin Jefferson or any of those type of guys, although he thinks he is, and credit to him, that's the way I would negotiate. The 49ers will be lucky if they get a second or a third round pick for him because of the payroll. But him running out and saying that he's demanding a trade or he wants to be traded, I think everything Brandon Ayuk is doing the last couple of weeks is the desperate act or an act of a desperate man that's losing the negotiations, because he thinks he's worth at the high end of the scale of wide receivers, and San Francisco is not far off of that. San Francisco, by reports, has made reasonable offers, like he's a second tier star wide receiver, which that's probably the right place for him, but he thinks he's a first tier star. And for negotiating purposes and for his own mindset, I commend him for taking that stance. But if the 49ers were worried about that they're lowballing him too much or whatever, they would have upped their deal. They would have gotten a deal done already. They have no reason or pressure to do a deal right now, because they could just let Ayuk's not going to report to camp. So Ayuk could not report to camp and it not affect anything. It's not like he can't just step right into the offense in middle of August or September, the first week of September, when everything is patched up, or he agrees that he's just going to have to, play out a final season with the 49ers. So I as soon as Ayuk said, I'm asking for a trade in the last 24 hours, now we're starting to see the articles of the 5 teams most likely to get Brandon Ayuk. I would just simply say, if there was a big line of teams chomping at the bit to get Brandon Ayuk, it would have happened by now, but it's just not there. So he's negotiating somewhat against nothing, but what else can he do? He's doing exactly what he needs to do, even if he's going to lose, even if he's just howling at the moon. The San Francisco 49ers, they're certainly not acting like he's a key part of the franchise, but I think they think they're going to get him in the end, that he'll buckle and go ahead and either accept a lesser deal or just play out his 1 year. I think go ahead.
I was just going to say, I think the Niners know that the rest of the league isn't going to pay him Justin Jefferson or even CeeDee Lamb type money whenever Lamb does get that contract, right? Like, I like Ayuk a lot. He's really good, but he's not in that like elite tier to get $35 million per year. He's slightly under that, and I don't think anybody in the league is going to not only give up draft capital but then pay him like give him almost quarterback money. So that's what he's sort of realizing. But if I were him too, I mean, San Francisco is one of the top offenses in the league. Kyle Shanahan's one of the best offensive minds in the game. Like, why would you want to even take the risk, go to, say, Washington, and take your chances with Jaden Daniels, Cliff Kingsbury, a less proven system where you know you're going to produce? In San Francisco, it's a big brand. It just feels a little weird to me.
This is probably his best and only chance at a big contract. So I think he's going to take wherever the highest bidder is, he's going to have to take it. And you're right. I don't think anybody else is going to not only want to pay him that money, but then also have to give up stuff in order to do it. But if you're Brandon Ayuk, this is the exact way you have to play this. You stay away from camp, so you don't have to go to any of these stupid OTAs, and it's not like he's a new player, and it's not like he doesn't know the offense. It's not like there's a new coach or a new quarterback. Everything's the same. He can literally step in the middle of September for week 1 and everything would be fine. So he's got nothing but time on his hands to try to lever this as best he can, whether he's hoping there's going to be some fan outrage. If come August, let's say Washington is dabbling in it, is interested in it, and let's say the Steelers are interested in it, and they're making kind of mediocre offers. If we go into the preseason and let's say George Pickens steps the wrong way and tears his ACL, then all of a sudden the Steelers are way more interested in upping their offer for Brandon Ayuk. Same thing if Terry McLaurin goes down in Washington. So time is the 49ers' friend. Time is Brandon Ayuk's friend, because him going onto the practice field, there's no advantage. He could get hurt himself while he's trying to negotiate this deal. So this is probably going to go all the way through August and won't get settled until September. And the San Francisco 49ers can also play. If you're the San Francisco 49ers and you know that you're going to make this trade, there's no advantage unless somebody gives you a killer deal that you can't say no to. There's no advantage for the 49ers to make this trade now and allow other teams to get Ayuk integrated. It's better if you're going to trade him, deal him to whatever team at the last second, like Washington, if it's going to be within the same conference, so that it's going to take them some time to get up to speed with the playbook and all that kind of stuff, that you will lessen the chances that Ayuk's going to come back and haunt you or walk right into his new place in week 1. He has 200-yard game and everybody's freaking out like, why did you trade this guy? So time is on both of their sides, but I don't think there's a market for Ayuk, and he's asking for too much. I don't know when and if and how they'll agree, but they'll probably end up agreeing the Ayuk back to San Francisco.
Yeah, I think that's the most likely scenario here too. So we'll see what happens. RC, circling back to Devontae, feels weird to me that these trade rumors are like circulating now. Do you think it has anything to do with like Aaron Rodgers kind of saying tongue-in-cheek at that golf event that, oh, I can't wait to be Devontae's teammate again or whatever? That's probably where this is coming from, right?
There's certainly that, and it's easy to connect them to Aaron Rodgers. Makes all the sense in the world. But I think a lot of it has to do with everybody assumes that the Raiders are terrible. They have no quarterback, and Devontae Adams wants to leave because of all of that. I don't think any of that is true right now. If they go 0-9, might be a different story. but I don't think they're going to go 0-9. And Aiden O'Connell is going to be a legit NFL starting quarterback. So where Devontae Adams is at right now is they're not afraid of the Chiefs coming off of last year, and I think they think they're a playoff team and a sneaky take down the Chiefs for the division team. Like, I mean, most teams in the preseason are delusional. So, but Las Vegas has that rah-rah going from last year. Great. And we'll see how it plays out. But the media thinks they have no quarterback, and therefore Devontae Adams is mad and he wants to re-hook up with Aaron Rodgers, which is wishful thinking, but it's not the reality right now.
And then also, RC, the other thing that was kind of circulating the web too is, I don't know if you've seen that Netflix show Receiver, but there's one clip that's been going around on Devontae Adams, which you'll remember this play. Detroit, Monday Night Football, Raiders are visiting, and Garoppolo misses him wide open. He slams his helmet, says he wants to like get out of there or whatever. I think people are forgetting that Garoppolo got benched after AOC comes in. He was very frustrated with Garoppolo, and McDaniels was the coach then too. A lot of things changed after that, and he likes Pierce. So I agree with you. I think as of right now, he's happy. He likes playing for Pierce. He's a player's coach, former player. But what's going to happen when, you and I both think the Raiders are going to regress, and that late season spurt, right, was more of an anomaly than a trend in my eyes. And that was capped off by beating the Chiefs too late in the season, which was impressive. But I think that Adams right now is happy. When the Raiders start doing bad and he's not getting the ball, then what's going to happen? I don't know.
I don't think he's this sentence will come out wrong, but I don't think he's not going to get the ball. Not going to not get the ball. O'Connell got better as his run went along. His targets to Devontae went up as his numbers went up as the Raiders started winning. So I think Devontae Adams, who came out a couple days ago and said he thought that O'Connell was going to be, they asked him about the quarterback competition, and he said that he thought it was going to be Aiden O'Connell. But if Josh McDaniels was still the coach of this team, then I think Devontae Adams would want out. When Josh McDaniels is gone and you bring in Antonio Pierce, and Antonio Pierce is smart, he goes to Devontae Adams and asks what he's seeing, what he wants. That's a big deal for Devontae Adams. Josh McDaniels did not care what Devontae Adams thought about anything. But Antonio Pierce is keeping Devontae Adams in the loop. I've seen it in interviews, Devontae Adams talking about Pierce coming up to him to ask about fill in the blank, the quarterback situation or whatever. So Devontae Adams at this point has no reason to leave. There's going to be a contractual issue this time next year, but the Raiders may give him all the money in the world and he'll be happy this time next year.
Yeah, and he's also going to be 1 year old. I forget how old he is now, but
31.
31. Next year he'll be 32 in a contractual. And then it makes probably sense for them. Well, we can foresee a split then. But right now, especially with Pierce, I mean, I like the way Pierce is playing this too, RC. Like, he's really like, keeping I think like Crosby really likes him. He's obviously keeping Adams in the loop. That's Pierce's way to maintain that head coach position, right? Like, get the players really involved, be a player coach. Like, he's playing his cards really well there. I honestly, like, I look at the Raiders and I just think that they had their chance to hire Cliff, but then instead, I don't know why they don't guarantee that third year or whatever, and they get Luke Getsy, right? But then in the draft, on top of it, they could have gotten an offensive lineman. I think Fuaga was on the board, but instead they draft Bowers. Like, if they just had Kingsbury, drafted Fuaga, I'd be looking at this team a lot differently.
Antonio Pierce has to be one of the luckiest people in the world in that you get the interim job after one of the worst coaches and worst humans that has wandered around the NFL, and Josh McDaniels. Everybody hates Josh McDaniels. So anybody that followed him was going to be better than a better coaching situation for Devontae Adams and for the rest of the team. But Antonio Pierce brought a swagger, a level of confidence, an identity, and they won games and they looked good, and it was promising despite all of the issues that you could point to that the Raiders had. So I can see why they think there's something. I don't think they're one of the worst teams in the league. I just can't see them getting. I don't know that Antonio Pierce that's going to wear off. That we're the toughest. We're not taking any crap from anybody. That's going to wear off when they start losing some games, and they don't have the personnel across the board to compete with the Chiefs, probably not, and not the Chargers. And Antonio Pierce is going to be the worst coach in that division. Mark Davis is the worst owner, tied with the Denver Broncos ownership. So I mean, everything's like Las Vegas is probably going to have either the worst or the second worst starting quarterback in that division come week one, and their starting quarterback is nowhere near Herbert or Mahomes. So it's so much of an uphill battle for them when they start losing. I bet, and then we'll see the nuttiness of Antonio Pierce, and things will start to fall apart. But right now, they're all on a high and thinking they're somebody.
Yeah. Should we segue into Joe Shane and the Giants?
Before we do that, just my last notes of the week to just get across, getting a feel for where the early redrafts and rankings and everything are starting to go. I was talking to Ross Jacobs about two particular players that we're seeing movement on. One, the Derrick Henry cheapness factor. He's too old, and he's a third, maybe fourth round in a 12-team redraft running back. That is going away fast. He is starting to. He is one of the faster risers I'm seeing in ADPs. He's starting to head towards being a second round running back, not a fourth round running back, which was in the first quarter of this calendar year, we pushed Derrick Henry as the number one thing to acquire before free agency, because the way that it's worked out was very possible was the way it was going to work out. And everybody was thinking he's too old, he's broken down, he's a free agent, he's going to go into a split with some team. People are starting to realize that Derrick Henry is in maybe the greatest situation that he's had in his NFL career this year. So Derrick Henry is way on the move all of a sudden in the last week or so. I can see by what questions people are asking me, what they're talking about from the people who are only play redraft, that are just now starting to dust off the football notes and getting the draft guide and going through it, and they all can't believe the Derrick Henry ADPs and what a value he's going to be. And I see Henry moving up in rankings, and we're starting to get bombarded with all the fantasy articles about the 5 players you can't draft, the 5 players you must have, the 10 players that earlier in the year, Derrick Henry was on all the avoid lists. You don't see him on any avoid list now. But the one player that has suddenly rocketed to the most distrusted top 15 running back name, you want to make a guess who that might be? I'm not surprised once I thought about it, but I'm surprised nonetheless that it just happened like all in the last week. There's a running back, top 15. You might be on mute, Andrew.
Sorry.
Top 15 running back ADP that the experts are turning on, and he's showing up in all of the overrated, don't touch, there's a problem lists.
Is it Saquon?
No, they love Saquon. There will always be love for Saquon.
My second guess would be Rashad.
He's eternal, but actually they're starting to become more and more begrudging acceptance of him. The player that I'm seeing from a number of different angles that's getting the most distrust now, that's starting to fall. In fact, he may start to fall back and get passed by Derrick Henry going up in front of him, is Devon Achane is now the number one of the top running backs distrusted piece, because Mike McDaniel came out with was quoted in a interview saying that Raheem Mostert was their leader, the guy that they run behind, all that type of stuff. And I think what Mike McDaniel was saying was Mostert is more our spiritual lead. Like he's probably the lead guy. Mostert will probably start those games, but that happened last year. And then Achane would come in and play more, touch the ball just as much, and make big numbers off of being in a duo backfield with Mostert. So I'm surprised how fast they're turning on it, but it's because Mike McDaniel keeps hinting that this is Mostert's backfield and everybody else is, just it's a three-headed monster, or it's a group effort, and Mostert is the spiritual leader. It's all being interpreted as this is bad. Why would I spend draft capital on Achane, which I get, but I think it's going to be wrong in the end.
So you would still would you advise people if he slips, let's say, because I think he's had a second round ADP for a while. Like if he drops into the third, does that become
then you have to really, there's a storm or a party gathering at that about round 2.5 to 3 round level, where Henry's coming into it, Achane might be falling back into it, and Rashad and Pacheco are kind of hovering behind it in a cluster, to where you're going to have to make a decision to get one of them, and then you'll miss out. You'll get one of them in the third, and then they won't be there, and none of them will be there in the fourth, or you draft one way earlier than you expected in the second, and then you get another one in the third, and then that's your running back group. This is becoming one of the most unusual setups for a redraft that I can remember going through in years, because there's a lot of running back value in this redraft, but so much so that you can't just, you could, but you don't think you're going to draft 4 running backs with your first 4 picks, but they're so valuable, and you could easily start looking at the wide receivers and going, yeah, I can wait another round on a wide receiver. I really want those running backs. And then you look up and you got 4 running backs and nothing else. It's like there's so many bargains that is too many of them to try to, you're gonna not get one of your beloved bargains in this year's redraft.
RC, the way that I look at it is I see those top receivers, right? Like we're not going to sit here and rank them out. Obviously, people can go to the site, check that out. But think about your elite receivers, your Hill, your ASB, whatever. You miss out on them. You miss out on that elite class. Then you're in this next cluster of second receivers. If you just look at ADP, not your rankings, you see Marvin Harrison, you see Olave, you see London. I don't want any part of that. Like, then I think what you're saying is
which forces you into running back.
exactly.
And so then you go, okay, great, I got, Breece Hall. But then if your plan is predicated on, wow, look at all these running back values in rounds 2, 3, and 4, you're like, wait, I already got Breece Hall. What am I gonna take 3 running backs next? And then if I don't, what wide receiver is there any wide receiver I really want to pay for in round 2 or 3? Do I want to pay up for another position? It's an odd year, very dependent on where you are drafting. Maybe like none other year that I can recall in many years, being in the right spot of the redraft, which I addressed in a recent report, so people can go look at the different strategies and the different problems with where you might be in the draft. But I'm seeing some redrafts where everything just works out perfectly, and through 4 rounds we escape with the exact people that we were targeting. Couldn't get them all, but of the targeted list they were 4 of the ones on the target. Like, it'd be great if 4 out of these 8 that we're really looking at, if we could get 3 of them, it'd be great. And then we wind up with all 4 in 4 rounds, and we're like, oh, this worked out awesome. Then the very next, later that day, I could be in a very similar redraft situation and get none of those players in the first 4 rounds. And then there's a despair that sets in, and you're looking at your team after 4 rounds going, none of this was I didn't want any of these guys. How did I wind up with these guys? So I haven't been in a draft year like that in a long time. Usually I know exactly what I'm going to do, when I'm going to do it in the first couple rounds, because I want to make it easy on myself, and there's all these bargains to be had. And if I got to draft them around ahead, I will. But it's just all it lays out very weird right now. And now Derrick Henry, who I thought would be the greatest of the values, is now rushing in and starting to become less of a value and forcing my hand of who do I want to choose among my desired running backs. So, but all that to say, Achane may be entering that discussion because he's starting to fall.
Yeah, that's the crazy part about this year's draft. Until you started saying it, I didn't really like connect the dots. But in my head, I was always thinking that I don't like this second tier of receivers in the second and third round. So interesting that.
I can like them. There's some guys I go, hey, I would take that person for free. But do I want to pay? Is that what I want from the first round compared to the top tier wide receiver? It's such a drop off.
Yeah.
There's not that drop off at running back. Like, if I don't get a running back out of the first round, running backs in the second, third, and what I hoped was the fourth, I'm like, great. I think these guys might be better than the first round guys, top to bottom, all the way. I'm not depressed at all. But I miss out on that top tier of wide receivers, and I'm like, oh, crap.
Yeah, definitely. Well, I think that's going to be interesting. I wanted to see where Henry eventually ends up. I wonder if he cracks into the first round, because I've seen him in the second like pretty consistently though. I think it was probably pretty early on in the offseason where he was in the third, right?
Third, even third, leaning towards fourth.
That's crazy.
Because the sentiment was he's too old. He was inefficient last year, and he's old. So why would we go in on this?
Yeah.
The public it's kind of like, Rotten Tomatoes, when the critics crush a movie and then you look and the public loves it, or vice versa. The experts didn't like Derrick Henry because of his age, but then the public followed that at first. But I think this is a public-led thing where they're coming around going, hey, this is something we want in on. This is Derrick Henry with the Ravens. Like, how could it get any better than that?
Yeah. Well, We'll see. Um, should we move on to Hard Knocks
All right.
or anything
Yep.
else? All right.
Let's go. That was my three topics that I told you would take about 2 minutes.
Yep.
That took 35 minutes. So that's always inflate my time estimates times 3.
Well, I got
Minimum.
3 topics too, RC, but I don't know that mine are gonna. I don't think mine will take 2 minutes. I think mine will be a little longer. Let's see if it exceeds yours. But first one I want to run by you, RC. I know that you haven't watched Hard Knocks fully yet, the off-season one following the Giants.
Y'all are gonna make me watch it.
I'm forcing you to watch it, RC, because it's so different than the typical Hard Knocks. They're following the front office during the draft process, so it's really cool to get that level of insight. But I think because it's the first year they're doing it, a lot more than what the Giants and probably Joe Shane wanted to be out is getting out, and the NFL's realizing this is good content. We got to let this roll out, but it's not putting the Giants in the best of light.
I don't know that it's good content. I don't know what the NFL's thinking with Hard Knocks, because to me they make everybody look like cartoon characters to me. I have never watched a season of Hard Knocks and walked away going, whoa, look the brilliance of that coaching staff. Like, man, is that organization really well run? I liked Dan Campbell's attitude with the Detroit one, but everybody else that I've watched, and I haven't watched some of the more recent ones because it got to a point with Hard Knocks where it was silly. It was a useless watch. But now I'm intrigued because the Giants want to be more administrative and management behind the scenes. And then when I saw the clips of what I saw, I couldn't believe it. So
That's what I mean by good content. It's interesting, not good in the sense that Giants are being run good. It's just entertaining to me that there could be this level of ineptness in the NFL. You built a business predicated on this, RC, right? Like how the mainstream thinks, how these general just seeing it live is just kind of like,
and that we worship them. We all assume that that the older man in a white coat with a stethoscope wrapped around his neck on the TV commercial is really a doctor and knows what he's talking about. That times 100 is what we think of the NFL, that anybody that has jobs in the NFL must be mega geniuses. And it's really one of the most, I can't say that it's one of the most or the most, because I've been with 2 pretty big corporations. One really big corporation that was a GE, General Electric based company, many years ago. And that's when you said you worked for GE, or somebody said GE, it really meant something, like 20 years ago. And as I was working for a company that they owned that was in the GE family, but we had to deal a lot with GE, a collection of the dumbest smart people I've ever met in my entire life. I mean, they had degrees and they had training and but they were the dumbest in reality people, playing businessman or playing salesman or playing manager guy. It's like, the American Office, the Michael Scott Office, is a farce, but it's really not that.
It's not far off from reality. It's really not. If you work in corporate America, like, you could see, it's, obviously the Office is a little exaggerated, but I'm with you, RC. You see that level of ineptness. But, in my regular work, in my 9 to 5, I work a lot with Fortune 500 companies. I see their executives there. I kind of see good leaders. I see bad leaders. And to be a good leader, it's about, like, commanding presence. You can see it in someone's body language, the way they speak to people, the way they act. And from those limited interactions in Hard Knocks, RC, from what I'm seeing that the NFL's putting out there, Joe Shane's not it. Like, Joe Shane does not look like a leader to me whatsoever. And it's so encapsulated by that phone conversation he had with Saquon where he's like, hey, we're gonna let you hit the market, but you're gonna let us make an offer, right? You're not gonna, you promise you're gonna. How are you talking? You're talking to the kid like he's acting like the high school teenager, calling like the head cheerleader, asking her out on a date. Hey, don't forget that. That's the sort of like conversation he's having with Saquon. I'm like, this is so crazy that this guy has a general manager role where he's supposed to kind of like be making the hard decisions, the toughest player, the toughest minded person in the building, where he can't even talk to his star player confidently and explain the situation. It just blew my mind.
You could see that he had no conviction, no confidence, no anything in his demeanor or conversation that lets you know that this is a guy I want negotiating my multi-million-dollar deals. He could be the greatest scout of football that there ever was, and the fact that he wants to go all in with Daniel Jones lets you know that's true, that he's a genius on scouting. But if he was a real genius on scouting, a lot of that job is the negotiations and the deal making and all of that. How could you trust that he's ever going to be ever able to make deals consistently for you into the future? When I saw that clip, I immediately said to whoever was in earshot when I saw it, like, if I was in corporate America and I was that person's supervisor, I would fire them the next second that I could after I saw that, because it's never going to get it. You cannot trust that person with your multi-million-dollar business. I would have to cut them loose. There'd be no training. There would be no mentoring. There would be no anything. I would be like, how the hell did that guy get that job? You're fired. And whatever anybody thinks of Donald Trump, pro or con, I'm thinking of the Donald Trump from The Apprentice. If Donald Trump would have seen that, he would have hit the desk and pointed the finger. I mean, that was embarrassing. Anybody that's been in business and in mid management had to deal with upper management or is in upper management that's been good and observational at corporate management could see that get played, that phone call, and everybody would have the same instant reaction. Like, there's no way I would want that guy representing my business.
Yeah, RC, if Joe Shane retains his job after, I mean, I think really where the Giants are heading, barring something unexpected, they're probably going to clean house next year with head coach, general manager. And what's going to happen is, I think Mara is going to want someone, the Giants owner, he's going to want someone with more cachet, more presence. And I think that's where Bill Belichick, who used to work for the Giants, comes in and tries to rebuild something there, whether that's the right or wrong move. But I think that's the type of 360 that they're going to be looking at. I don't think
they all want someone with cachet and presence, because they would have never hired that person we saw would have been the person they would have seen in the interview process. They hired sniveling Weasley corporate guy, not even Weasley, because that would indicate
he's a nice guy. Moxie. Yeah,
he's a nice lukewarm glass of water, and that a room temperature water, that must be what they coveted. I'm sure he had a nice binder and a PowerPoint presentation and whatever. And when I say that most people in corporate America and upper management are awful, have awful instincts, awful at their job, one of the greatest deficiencies I've seen in upper management, with the really good people I've worked around to the really bad people I've worked around and everybody in between, is they are almost to a person the worst interviewers and the worst hirers of people ever. They may be financial whizzes, they may be incredible negotiators, they may be rally the troop leaders. But when you when you put them in a position of hiring people, they are the worst. And the only people worse than successful salespeople, accountants, managers, operations managers, what have you, the only thing worse than them interviewing is the HR person who has no idea what the company does, never worked a day in the field in their life, but they have an HR degree, so they have a list of questions laminated that they got from business school, and they ask those, and they're looking for the nicest person that they can hire into the company. This person's so nice, and they had this pretty resume, and they had all the buzzwords, and they have all the credentials and all that, but you have to have a sixth sense when you're hiring somebody, and that's not most people's bag. If I was going to restart a company, I was going to restart my career, one of the two things I would do would be I would go into being a corporate hire. I would be a talent acquirer. I would be a representative for talent, or I would be in the corporate side going out and finding people, or I would just be independent and running around and looking for people in all walks of life. When I went to the restaurant, when I went to wherever, I would just collect talent. I would be known for, hell, that guy knows talent. If we have an opening, let's call his firm to see if he's got anybody that fits, because we know he gives us the best people. So it doesn't surprise me that a guy like Joe Shane can slide right through the cracks, because I'm sure he's got great suits and makes a great presentation, but that one phone call, that would be whatever school he went to, whatever degrees he has, wherever places he worked prior, Buffalo Bills, it all goes out the window because he just doesn't have it. That's like it's like the quarterback that is always to the team facilities at 4 a.m. and when you interview them, they can regurgitate the plays back to you from memory and all that. That's great. But can this guy play quarterback? I'm sure Daniel Jones aced his interview process. He went to Duke. But he can't play quarterback at a high level in the NFL. It doesn't matter.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter what his resume, it doesn't matter how he comes off in an interview. Like David Tepper got sucked in, and his wife got sucked in by Bryce Young and his family at their dinner. That set their franchise back a decade.
Yeah, exactly. And Tepper's, probably looking at Bryce Young, he's really polished guy. He ran these national championship teams. He can talk the talk, but you take one look at Bryce Young, and yes, there have been small quarterbacks that have been successful, right? But that is not the typical mold. You're putting the number one overall pick. You're betting the future. Those smaller QBs that succeeded were taken in the later rounds for a reason, because they most of the time don't pan out. You put your number one overall pick there. Not only did you do that, but literally the top four guys in that class, if you went any other direction, it would have been the right choice, right? Levis, AR, Stroud. Out of the four, you picked the wrong one, and the one that probably, if you just pulled a random guy off the street and said, and you put Levis, AR, and Stroud in the room, pick the quarterback, right? No one would pick Young. Like it was just such an obvious decision.
Not only did they pick that, they paid 3x to get it, because they traded several first round. They traded the near term future in order to make that colossal mistake. Yeah. So nothing surprises me, but I know that I want to watch Hard Knocks now, because I love agitating myself and then complaining about it to anybody who will listen. And then if there's nobody to listen, I'll just complain about it to my own self in my head. But on top of what we saw on that phone call that would be obvious to everyone, the other thing that I caught, that I walked away from in that minute and a half clip, is not only was his communications, the GM's communications and all that snivelly and weak and all that, but that is Saquon Barkley was the face of your franchise, like it or not. That player is the face of your franchise, the most popular player, arguably some would say their best player, and he probably was, which is sad, but it's true. If you're a general manager, do you not have a better relationship with that player than to call up and like, hey, how's it going? Hey, what you doing anything this summer?
Such an awkward call.
If you really want this guy back, is that you don't know what he's doing? Then you ask him, is he in Jersey? Like with no, why did you ask him if he was in Jersey? And then when he said yes, you had no follow-up question. Like, this isn't Where's Waldo? What are you trying to get at? I think he was thinking all this small talk is really going to wiggle my way into Saquon's heart. Me and him are buddies. And you could tell Saquon was like, yep, nope, nope, yep. And this guy is just wandering around with these questions that lets you know he's barely ever spoken to Saquon Barkley, but he's probably come past him in hallways or said stuff to him, and Saquon Barkley always talks to him in one-word responses. But to Joe Shane, he thinks that's a relationship. Oh, me and Saquon are tight. Yeah, every time I see him, I say, how you doing? And he's like, good. Like, me and him are close. Like, there was nothing close about that phone call. That was desperate guy. I think it was you that said it was like a first date, a phone call to ask someone out. That was guy who was interested talking to guy who wasn't interested, and the guy who was interested had no game, no line, no nothing. It's like, it was so bad. But I'm just shocked that this is the face of your franchise and your best player, and you have no relationship with him at all. That should tell you a lot. If you're the owner of the company and you're like, this is my general manager,
so
our most popular player, he has no relationship with.
You're going to watch it. I don't want to spoil it for you. But one thing I do want to add, which wasn't captured in those clips, Joe Shane's reasoning and what he set out to do in the offseason was, we let go of Barkley. He kind of implied, I want to address the offensive line. I want to protect Daniel Jones and give him a fair shot. Because if you put Mahomes back there, apparently Mahomes can't do jack crap behind the Giants' offensive line, which I think is BS. Mahomes would probably take the Giants deep into the playoffs. Just setting that aside for a second. They went out, right? So they lost Barkley. They're not paying Barkley anymore, right? And what did they do in free agency? They got two guards. One, John Runyon, who you can argue is probably above average, right? I don't think he's at a Pro Bowl level, but above average is probably fair. And then they get this Illuminor guy from Vegas, right? And he's, what, at best, average? I don't know where I would put him. So that's your big plan. You lose the face of your franchise. You lose your cornerstone player. And I'm seeing Ross in the chat saying Runyon not above average. So you get two guards to come in and you lose Barkley. But really, like, how are you giving Daniel Jones the best chance to succeed in that situation where,
but
like,
then they were going to turn around with their number 5 overall pick and draft a top offensive lineman. So, oh no, wait, they drafted a wide receiver. I'm sorry.
Sure. Well, I get the argument to, Neighbors is great and a great wide receiver will make your QB look good. But I mean, the other team of New York, the Jets, they went out and tried to improve that offensive line. Morgan Moses, Tyron Smith, drafting Fishanu, right? They made an effort on paper. The Giants, I don't know, man. That part was really weird to me.
But here's the additional part to that we can now assume after seeing all of this is they probably wanted to go take all of this money in the free agency and get all these offensive linemen. But who wants to play for the New York Giants, and who wants to play for Joe Shane when you talk to that bowl of oatmeal that you can't get excited about? And then everybody hates Brian Daboll. So why would anybody? I mean, if you had a general manager who had a silver tongue, maybe he could, fire some people up and get them excited and all that. But imagine Joe Shane calling the top free agents and talking to them to try to convince them to come play for the Giants. Like, what is he going to say? He's not going to say anything. He's going to say a bunch of nonsense that's going to put the players to sleep. So they're doomed in part because of Joe Shane. Now the countdown is on to when the Giants figure this out.
Yeah.
Giants ownership figures this out.
And I'm sure, and you'll see, RC, Merrill was like, I don't, like, in a perfect world, Barkley will be back. Like, he was pushing for Barkley to stay. Now Barkley leaves, and he's the one on tape saying, like, I want this guy, and they have a bad season, he's going to be out. So, but I'll let you catch up on that, RC, and watch Hard Knocks in more detail. We can leave Joe Shane alone.
Yes, I'm going to get it. I'm gonna start a GoFundMe to get $11.99 so I can get a month of Max, so I can watch 5 hours of content.
There you go. Okay. The other two things I wanted to talk to you about today. Michael Lombardi on his podcast, the GM Shuffle, released his blue chip players in the cornerback group. So blue chip is what he defines as the top five to six corners in the league. Okay, so check out this list and tell me if you agree that they're top five blue chip, your blue chip players, and I know one of them is at least going to catch your attention, and who would be your blue chip guys in the cornerback group. So check this out. He said that Sauce Gardner would be in there as a blue chip corner.
Is he in there? Just for context, is this in order of who he thinks, or just?
I'm going to tell you who his top corner. So he said these are all the blue chip guys, and then he gave his top corner, who's going to shock you. So he went on to say Sauce Gardner, Derek Stingley, Patrick Surtain, Jalen Ramsey, Trent McDuffie, and Trevarius Ward from the Niners. Now, out of those six players, who do you think that he said was the top corner?
I'm not cheating per se, but I think somebody already told me this, so I know the answer is Stingley.
Okay, yeah, I think I might have revealed that too. My bad. But yeah. What's your reaction to that?
But I wouldn't have guessed that if you were saying I wouldn't have guessed that. I might have guessed it by the reason, or by the fact the way you would ask the question, that I would be surprised. So I might go there. So do you want to take them one at a go? If you name them one at a time, I'll give you a quick reaction.
Sauce.
Generational, the best cornerback I've ever scouted, the best cornerback I've ever seen in the NFL, barring maybe Deion Sanders, and far and away the best in the NFL. To me, there's not even anybody really close to him.
So that guy would definitely. Sauce is your number one. Now let's go to Stingley. Is he a top 5 guy in your eyes?
No.
Is he a top 10? I think
he's just a deep ball covering corner. I don't think he's that great with crossing route receivers, but he's good if you want somebody that's going to run deep with guys who are running deep. That's his proclivity. So no, he would not be in my top 5.
Pat Surtain.
I know he's supposed to be in the top 5. When I watch him, I know he's good. I'm never blown away, but I don't mean that to say that he's bad or short. I would take him over Stingley. he'd be on the cusp of top 5. I just can't ever get that excited about watching Surtain. I've never watched him and been like, oh man, look at this guy. There's a couple corners that I watch and I'm like, holy crap. But he's not one of but he's good. He's definitely good. Possibly great. But I'm never jumping out of my seat about him as this elite shutdown corner.
Jalen Ramsey, and I know he struggled with injuries, but when he's healthy,
I'd say he's arguably the number 2 behind Sauce Gardner still to this day. He's not as good as he was in his time. He was unbelievable. Still not better than Sauce Gardner, but he still got it. Watching him last year with Miami, he still got it.
I know where you're going to go with this, but Trent McDuffie.
I just never get the sense that he's a top corner. On the outside, I mean, I know he's good in the slot. They're moving him to the outside. I just don't see, he's not my type of corner. Maybe I'm missing it, but he's just not my type of corner. He's solid, he's good, but he never stands out to me like, whoa, this guy is elite. You know, it's shut down that side of the field because Trent McDuffie's out there. I just don't. I'm not there. But I know he's good. Better in the slot. But
RC, I remember when Snead left, you felt like KC had people to sort of like backfill Snead's role. If McDuffie doesn't work out on the outside, who do you think could kind of take that, like fill Snead's shoes? Because it doesn't sound like you think McDuffie can do that.
Well, they obviously don't think the same way that I do, or they would have just made this change right away. But I think Josh Williams should have been starting for them a while ago, and then they could have left Trent McDuffie in the slot. And maybe that's still what's going to happen in the end. But I don't know why Josh Williams was not that if they would have come out and said, man, we love L'Jarius Sneed. We hate to see him go. But we really believe in Josh Williams. His time has come. So, here we go. I would have went, wow, KC really knows what they're doing. But them going, oh, we're just going to yank Trent McDuffie out of the slot and put him to the outside where I don't think anybody thinks it is his best spot or role. I don't get it. So the preseason and all that may force their hand into going there. But McDuffie's fine. It's not gonna kill them. But he's all that to say he's not. I don't think he's in my top 5.
And last one on Lombardi's list, Charvarius Ward.
I'm not a fan. That's another guy. Kansas City was like, wow, this guy's so good. See you later. We can do better. And they were right. But now letting Snead go, and I don't know that Snead is top 5. He's borderline top 5. I just went through watching all of Davante Adams 2023, and he had a 3-game stretch where he had Snead, then Ramsey, then Sauce Gardner right in a row, if I remember it correctly, that it was those 3 in a row. And Snead really couldn't. Snead was good, but you could see that Adams was the better of the two. It was just a point of whether the quarterback was going to deliver him the ball. But pretty much Davante Adams can get open on everybody on every play, and Snead struggled to keep up with Adams. Then he went on to Jalen Ramsey, and Jalen Ramsey played him really well, but there was a couple times those guys I think they get so hyped that they're facing Davante Adams that they outthink themselves and they're worried that he's going to put a double move on or whatever, and Adams would do something subtle and make Ramsey think he was going deep, and Ramsey was afraid of getting beat. So all of a sudden Ramsey would start breaking deep, and Devontae Adams had already turned around and stopped and was going the other direction and was left wide open because Ramsey guessed wrong and was too excited. But there's a couple of those moments where Ramsey's just too aggressive and too guessing. But by and large, Ramsey played him pretty well. But Adams still got the best of him. You know, if you looked at every snap and every target, I would give the win to Adams over Ramsey. But then when Adams played Sauce Gardner, no, he wasn't getting open. Sauce Gardner was all over him all of the time, and Adams still found a way to get. You know, no one can shut down Devontae Adams every time, but Sauce Gardner was the closest. So that's I don't think Snead would be in my top 5. I'm seeing Ross throw out some of the names on there.
So two players that Lombardi put as his blue chip. It sounds like you agree with Sauce and Jalen. Let's just round up your top 5. Who would be? You don't even have to rank them 3, 4, 5. Who would be the next 3?
I'd be throwing guys in there and looking at the list, and I'm going to cheat because I'm seeing Ross is putting some players in there. I think Christian Gonzalez has a chance to be Sauce Gardner and Ramsey-like, so I would put him in there. I'll say sight unseen, but I've seen plenty of them to know Christian Gonzalez deserves to be in there. Boy, Joey Porter looked really good last year. He might press into my top 5. AJ Terrell is right up there in the top 5. Marlon Humphrey may be falling off a little bit. I'm not huge on Denzel Ward, but it may be because every time I turn around, he's hurt. I'm going to look a list of teams now real quick, just to refresh my memory.
And while you do that, RC, I'll remind the audience with Christian Gonzalez, obviously he was injured like midway to last season. But one thing that caught my attention about Gonzalez, in addition to yours and Ross's scouting last year, Tyreek Hill, after the Patriots played Miami, went out of his way, which he typically doesn't do, to compliment CG and talk about how great of a corner he was. And keep in mind, CG was a rookie, and Tyreek Hill's coming out and complimenting you like that. And when I saw that, that kind of stuck with me, that like, wow, maybe this kid's going to really be something. And it sucked that he got injured in week 6 or whatever. So I'm excited to see what he does this year.
Yeah, I think he's the second best corner I've ever scouted, behind Sauce. Awuzie, that's gone from Cincinnati to Tennessee, is pretty darn good when he is healthy. And I was impressed with some of the tape of watching him last year, because I checked in to see, is he still got it, or is he was coming off an ACL. I'm like, how did he look? I thought Awuzie looked really good. Other shutdown corners that catch my attention. Juju Brents from the Colts someday could try to fight to be in that top 5, top 10. The guy I've seen a couple of times that I've made note to just set aside some time to watch everything he did. Deonte Banks from the Giants is that was drafted. Was he a rookie last year? I'll get my years potentially confused. No, he was a rookie last year. He's really good. I thought he was good, but he's better than the good that I thought, with some of the things I've watched on him. Washington, no. Detroit, no. Green Bay. Jair Alexander, when in his prime, deserved to be top 5. I don't know if he's top 5 anymore. Jalen Johnson is good, but there seems to be maybe a bit of a hype bubble over him having a little good stretch, and everybody saying he's the greatest all of a sudden, when nobody was talking about him, and then all of a sudden everybody was like, "Oh yeah, Jalen Johnson, he's the best corner in the game." Like, wait a minute, we've gone a couple of years where everybody was like, "Yeah, he's good," but then all of a sudden he's the greatest. I haven't gotten that feeling from Jalen Johnson that he's super elite up with the top guys, but he's definitely really good. Marshawn Lattimore and Marshawn Lattimore and Jair Alexander are kind of in the same bucket. Like, this was 3 or 4 years ago. They're definitely in that top 5, but I don't know if they are anymore. And then Tre'Davious White, if healthy, when Tre'Davious White was healthy, he was a definite top 5. That's the thing about the Rams that could change the entire flow of the 2024 season. Is, did the Rams just get one of the 3 or 4 or 5 best corners in football for almost nothing a year removed, a year more of rehab from his injuries? Or is he going to be like that, like Jason Verrett from San Francisco, that always that's a great corner that always tears his knee every year and took his career away. So healthy Tre'Davious White is top 5. Tariq Woolen, when he's got his head screwed on straight, is a top 5 guy that I thought was going to push Sauce Gardner for best corner in the league as a rookie. Then last year he was like lost in a cloud. I don't know what happened to Tariq Woolen last year, but if Mike McDonald fixes him, whatever it was, I mean, I've seen Tariq Woolen be great, so I know it's there. It just, he has to be a bit of a knucklehead to have lost it last year with Pete Carroll, because he got benched early in the year. He like came off, almost won Rookie of the Year, and then he got benched a couple weeks into the season. So
that's all.
I don't know what happened to him.
Yeah. You want to move to the safety group too? So he did the same thing, gave his top 5 players, top 5 safeties. I'll name them one at a time. He didn't reveal who his best safety was with this group, but you just tell me yes or no. Yeah.
Yeah, I don't like safeties by and large. I think they're all very switchable and interchangeable and can be found hiding under rocks all over the place. So I'm not as passionate about who's the top safety and all of that. But when you tell me the list, I'll give you my reaction as to, wow, that makes sense, or why in the world are they talking about this guy?
Jesse Bates.
I don't think you can argue with that. The guy's been a top safety producer for a couple of years now.
Antoine Winfield.
Yeah. Yep. He's arguably the technical best. You wish he had more size to him, but he may be the technically best.
Jabril Peppers.
I don't know how he can be in the top. I think he's pretty good, for sure. But I'm just surprised that he's ranked that high when he got drafted and basically gave up on, and then all of a sudden he kind of blew around like tumbleweed and landed with the Patriots. So I don't know if that's why Lombardi thinks he's in the top 5, because Bill Belichick rehabbed him.
Yeah,
but I think he's pretty good.
His buddy helped him out. I don't know.
I don't know if he's top 5, but he's pretty good.
Kyle Hamilton.
One of my worst scouting things, I remember arguing with several people about it, and I think Ross was probably one of them. I didn't like the way Kyle Hamilton played. I thought he was soft. I thought he was just a deep center field guy that was just ball hawking and waiting to chase after deep passes, and that he wasn't worth a high round pick. But he's been a weapon in the NFL for sure. I still don't know that he's the world's greatest tackler, if you're into that for a safety, but he does all the other parts. He's a menace at safety. But that's where I get a little bit squishy. It's like everybody loved Jamal Adams, and for some people, Jamal Adams was a menace because of the way that he played. And if you used him in a certain way, he was a menace. He sacked quarterbacks. He got into the backfield. He disrupted the game, but he was also put in a position to disrupt the game because he was a terrible in coverage. So they used him as kind of a linebacker or edge rusher of sorts. And it's like, great, but you suck at all of the other aspects of the game. But that one aspect of the game you're really good at. So we see that Jamal Adams keeps getting bounced around the league now and failing. But there are people that swore he was the greatest safety. Everybody was lining up to give him more and more money, and I just never understood it. So Hamilton, to me, can be in that bucket. It's like he's good at what he does, but I don't know if he's the best safety out there, but he's definitely way better than what I thought I saw.
And last one on his list, RC, Javon Holland.
I'm not a Javon Holland. He's like a shrunken, bad Hamilton. I mean, I know that he's decent, but he's another guy that just sits. I don't like the safeties that just sit back and try to see where the ball is going, medium and deep, and try to run over and pick it off and make plays. There's a place in the world for that for sure, but I'm thinking I could get a lot of cornerbacks and that are not good east and west runners, or not good north and south runners, and maybe put them at safety if they got a little bulk to them, and let them go side to side, reading the quarterback and trying to break up passes, pick off passes. So I'm just not into Javon Holland, but I know he does a good job of sitting back and playing center field. There's probably more of an art to it that I'm giving it credit for, but I like the well-rounded safeties that do it all. And to me, that's not Holland.
Okay. Well, that concludes Lombardi's blue chip safety list. When I hear his other position groups too, I'm actually kind of curious to see where he's going to land with the offensive players like QBs, receivers. So we'll see where in the coming weeks when he releases that. RC,
so
do you want to?
I guess Derwin James died, and I didn't know it.
Didn't make the list.
He was everybody's favorite safe. I thought he was the greatest safety of all time. Now he's not even on the top 5 list.
Yeah.
So James is pretty, probably warrants being in that top 5. I'll have to see if there's any fall off last year, if the injuries are catching up to him. But
yeah, he gave a shout out to I think another Chargers safety. I can't recall his name though. Hold on.
It's like a Hawaiian name. Yeah.
Gilman. He actually mentioned that he played better than Derwin last year, which I found interesting.
That may be more on Gilman, but it also may be that James is starting to wind down. Yeah. Marcus Williams is definitely one of the better safeties out there. I like Kirby Joseph's pretty decent with the Lions. Rayshawn Jenkins is pretty. There's like I wouldn't be, if I was running an NFL team, I would go put all of my chips in to get Christian Gonzalez. I would have potentially had an NFL team if I was a GM that would have Sauce Gardner on one side and Christian Gonzalez on the other.
Oh my God.
Because Gonzalez fell so far in the draft, I would have traded up to try to get him after I got Sauce. Like if I was the general manager of the Houston Texans, I might have Gardner and Gonzalez as my corners. I'm paying anything to get those elite corners. When it comes to safety, I'm just like, I could get Rayshawn Jenkins and he can probably do a pretty good job. I could get one of the Buffalo Bills older safeties that's still out there in free agency, and they do a good job. I could get 2 of the Dallas backups. I think Ross will be able to know too. I don't know if Marquise Bell is a starter now. I can't remember off the top of my head, but Wanye Thomas is a backup safety for Dallas. I would take him to put him in to my safety group. Denver has PJ Locke kind of come out of nowhere and is going to be a solid safety. I feel like I could get safeties anytime that I wanted, free agency or draft wise, but corner is special and critically important.
Yeah, agreed. It's hard to find a shutdown guy, especially someone at Sauce's level. So when you have the opportunity, you want to draft him, get him in free agency or whatnot. But RC, should we jump into the chat's questions now?
Yep, let me go push up to the top of it, and you can go down and tell us what we need to respond to.
So, first one, Silent Warrior. I'm starting to like Devontae more than Wilson, Garrett Wilson, Jahmyr Gibbs, AJ Brown at the back end of mocks I'm doing and combining with Allen. Only problem is at that back end, the likes of Pacheco, White, and Henry are gone.
We've got issues with this draft, but see if my next couple mocks that come out over the next week or two, and all through August, but my next couple mocks, I'm going to try some different things to defeat this running back problem, where all of a sudden all the great value running backs are coalescing or congealing all to the same general area where you can only get one of them, or if you overpay, you can get two of them. So, and that may be the way to go, is to overpay running back second and third and fade quarterback. So there's a different ways to go after it. We're still in the process of figuring it out, while at the same time the ADPs are going to start changing on certain players. So we got to stay up with who's being anointed and who's being undercut.
And then Silent Warrior again, saw the Broncos just signed guard Quinn Miners to an $80 million deal. That was over 4 years, RC. So that's a annual average value, the extension of $20 million per year for this guy. It feels like all these guards are getting paid during free agency. You look at Robert Hunt with Carolina, right? And do you think, is Quinn worth that money to you?
I'd have to look at I don't know the guard payroll market as well. I mean, as a player, you definitely want to keep him, retain him. Whether he's worth that much money, I mean, the way these teams draft, if you get somebody good at a key position, you might as well pay him and keep him instead of Saquon Barkleying them. So I'm not torn one way or the other with that signing. It's more good than bad because you're going to want to retain your elite, higher-end offensive lineman.
Tom Finn, 2018. If Devontae is happy in Vegas, maybe he'll sign an extension unless he wants to go after a ring. Yeah, I mean, barring anything, a miracle, I don't think the Raiders are going to be contending for a Super Bowl, and Devontae Adams is prime at least. So, RC maybe...
I think we'll see that mid-season or so. Like, if the Raiders are doing well, if like the Raiders are a surprise 5-4 and coming up, they're getting past the trade deadline and it's obvious that they're not going to need to trade Devontae Adams, I think they will make him an offer so that they won't even disrespect him or let it go into next year, because it could get a little contentious. I don't think they would do that to him, but maybe they're going to kind of wane it out and see if he tears his ACL or something happens to affect his value. But so I can see if things go well, I think he'll stay there. It's if things go bad and the Raiders are like, well, let's flush this toilet and start over again. They can't give Devontae Adams a ton of money at age 33 next year if they're rebuilding and retooling.
Could you imagine if Detroit in the middle of the season just picks up the phone and makes it
or Kansas City, or I mean wherever he goes,
Raiders won't trade him
changes
there,
the game.
Raiders aren't going to give him to Kansas City. There's no way.
No, I think he'll wind up on one of the big contender. If it's not the Jets, it'll be the Rams will figure out something. The 49ers, all those types of teams. But the Lions should be the first in line and spend everything to get. I mean, that's the difference. That move right there means the Lions are definitely the Super Bowl favorites.
RC, I'm gonna make you the GM of the Lions right now. Say you can acquire Devontae. Would you give up a first round pick for him?
I would, because you got a chance to win the title. You got to go for it. If I was the Jets, I would have traded last year. I would have traded Garrett Wilson in a deal to get Devontae Adams, and I probably would have got a little bit more because of the difference in payroll and age and everything. But if you're going to go all in with Aaron Rodgers, how do you not go get Devontae Adams at the same time? But that's the Jets for you. So I would have sent Garrett Wilson in that deal, but no, they're like most dynasty managers. They're playing for 2027. They're not playing for 2024. So, like, what if I get Devontae Adams and next year he's not good anymore because of his age? Then what? Then I won't have a wide receiver going into 2027. You're gonna find wide receivers, and you're going to find whatever you need whenever you need it into the future in fantasy or in the NFL. But there's only so many windows to win a title, and the Lions are there. They are a Devontae Adams or something equivalent away, and you would think that they would want to get that asset now, not in the middle of the season when it takes a while to integrate it. But if it's that way, so be it. But if I'm the Lions, I would be killing myself to get my hands on an ace, veteran, number one type outside wide receiver,
complimenting,
just take it over the top, because everything else they got is ready to win a Super Bowl. It's no one's afraid of Josh Reynolds last year. No one's afraid of Khalif Raymond and Jameson Williams this year. If they can combat that, and they don't even have to get the tippy top names like a Devontae Adams, but if they were to get Devontae Adams, it's over. They're going to win the Super Bowl.
Okay, Silent Warrior. What teams are in the worst offensive coordinator situations this year? Arthur Smith, Nathaniel Hackett, RC. We actually, I think I posed this as a YouTube poll question, who's the worst OC heading into 2024, but I'll let you take a stab at it. You voted for Hackett on that?
I think so, because he is incompetent. So Arthur Smith has a plan. I don't agree with it, but Arthur Smith has a plan, and he's not failed radically at it. Yeah, he's hurt fantasy football results, but he's been neutral in the teams he's been on, have been middle of the pack, maybe underperforming, but it's not like he's a mental disaster. Nathaniel Hackett is a mental disaster. We have seen it. So there can't be anybody worse than Hackett. Ken Dorsey is no prize either, but he's not really the offensive coordinator of that team. Stefanski is. So, but the guys that are the true offensive coordinators, it can't get any worse than Arthur Smith and Nathaniel Hackett. And I put Arthur Smith in that. I mean, Hackett is incompetent. Arthur Smith isn't incompetent. He just doesn't use the assets around him the way that he could thrive with, and it's maddening. But then what he does do is okay, but he was sitting on great in Atlanta and coached it to okay. Nathaniel Hackett is just irrelevant.
Disaster.
He might not be the worst because he's so irrelevant that it's like he's not even an offensive coordinator. So Aaron Rodgers is going to do what Aaron Rodgers wants to do. So It could be Arthur Smith is the most damaging because he actually takes performance down. Nathaniel Hackett just doesn't. I mean, he shows up to work and chews sunflower seeds and snaps towels at Aaron Rodgers' ass and plays golf with him. I don't think he actually does anything. So at least he's not hurting the Jets. He's not helping the Jets, but I'll take not hurting. Arthur Smith actually hurts performance. Ken Dorsey hurts performance.
Okay. Then Silent Warrior. Yeah, I'm seeing McConkey, Hollywood Brown, and those 3 running backs. I forgot which running backs we were referring to when he made that comment, but climbing a lot in ADP. Same with Zeke, Eckler, and Gus Edwards.
Pacheco, White, and Henry.
Yeah. The play might be to wait on QB and go Henry in the second, but if you miss Richardson, then it's Purdy.
That seems to be the path. When I started out doing my mock series, I was taking it in a certain direction from 3 different mock draft spots, and then after 3 or 4 rounds, I stopped and added a 4th plan and redid it in a completely different way because I saw how my original plan, how I thought it was going to go, was not going the way that I expected. Wasn't going according to the ADPs because things are just starting to move on all of the guys that we were in ahead on in the first half of the year. But so everybody's a dynasty winner off of all of that stuff. But now when it comes to redraft, they're starting to catch up to us now.
Okay. Then Mike Powell. I have noticed a couple players that have moved in values in Dynasty for you in the past few months. McBride has slid down and Pickens has moved up. Could you provide any extra context on the change in value?
I would say if you look at the undervalued report, the draft guide, I've got the detail on Trey McBride, but I think it's in short, the McBride success last year was with Marquise Brown hurt and out, Michael Wilson hurt and out. Now you turn around this year and you're going, okay, is Trey McBride really going to be the standout option for Kyler when in theory he has healthy Michael Wilson, healthy Greg Dortch, who he just called a top, Kyler called a top wide receiver in the league if he was taller. And now Marvin Harrison's going to get targets. Trey Benson's going to come along and add to their run game. At the time that McBride went nuts in the second half, not only were the wide receivers either banged up or missing, but Connor was out. They were running with besides Amari DiMercato, there was some other running back that you couldn't believe was actually in the NFL and starting for them. So I think
was it Michael Carter, or am I losing my mind?
No, Michael Carter was there, but there was somebody else. I think maybe it was Damian Williams came back from the dead and started a game for Arizona. Or maybe it was Keontae Ingram, and then they cut him. So it's like, okay, James Conner got hurt. We're going to go with Keontae Ingram, perhaps. I might be mixing my years. And then he did so bad that they ended up cutting him, and like 3 weeks later. So but Damian Williams was in there, and then Mercado got a start, and then so the McBride, I think, just had a window of opportunity and took advantage of it that I don't think that window is going to be there. Pickens, I'm moving up. Just when you go back and look at what worked for Russ last year, look at what Cortland Sutton was able to do. When Russell Wilson's in trouble, Russell Wilson has 2 moves now, 3 moves as a quarterback. 1, get rid of it as fast as humanly possible, like it's a hot potato, so that you don't get crushed. So he's going to dump it to running backs and dump it short to whoever he's supposed to dump it short to. His other move is roll out not see the first thing and run and slide. His third thing last year, the last couple years, has been, I'm in trouble. We're behind. We need something to happen. Let me just fling this out to Cortland Sutton. And I think Cortland Sutton had 10 touchdowns last year.
Yeah,
So
I think so.
If you're gonna play a let me fling it to somebody and hope something happens game, George Pickens is probably the best player in the league, the best wide receiver in the league to play. Please go get this fling in your general direction. So if Cortland Sutton can get 10 touchdowns with Russell Wilson, I think Pickens could get that and then some. The neutralizer is, what will Arthur Smith do to destroy all of this? But then the third angle of increase, that's something that would decrease it values, the Arthur Smith effect. But I also, there's a window, and I'm moving for a level of dynasty outlook where Arthur Smith is gone next year, or both Tomlin and Arthur Smith are gone next year. And then you got a whole new group in there that may be better for Pickens. Also, all that we're going through with Ayuk right now and others like him in the past, A.J. Brown, his year and all that, the George Pickens mayhem clock is 7 months and counting. He's going to want his money because he was underdrafted because he was hurt a year he was coming out of college and a bit of a knucklehead. So he ended up being a second-round pick. He deserves to be paid top 10 money talent-wise. I don't know if I would because he's such a knucklehead, but he's going to want that money. And Pittsburgh is killing him from being able to put the numbers up that he could be able to. So I think Pickens could very easily force his way out of Pittsburgh, where they go, this guy's insane. We can't put that money into him, but somebody else will. So I think Pickens could be either with a new coaching staff in Pittsburgh or a new coaching staff somewhere else, not Pittsburgh, next year for an outlook with him.
Okay. Silent Warrior food note, and this comment I read, it made me really hungry. Went to Buc-ee's since they opened one up in Colorado.
Now I'm not hungry.
Had the sliced brisket sandwich and was impressed. You're not a fan, RC?
I cannot imagine convenience store food, no matter how big the presentation and flair is, can be any good. I know nothing says fine dining like a human being in a giant beaver costume waddling around your facility. I know all of the great places I've eaten that all have that in common, but I just can't imagine Buc-ee's is a fine dining experience. And now I'm into terrible food. Like, I could eat fast food every day. I could eat Taco Bell, McDonald's, Burger King, and just rotate those around. So I'm not saying that from a fine dining experience. I've never had a good morsel of food prepared fresh by the convenience stores, whether it's QT's or Buc-ee's. And I have not tried anything at Buc-ee's, so I'm saying this blind, never having tasted it. Nowhere have I ever been that I've been satisfied with something to eat at a convenience store. And I have traveled around a lot. I don't like to fly. I like to drive. So I've drive around, been in and out of a lot of gas stations and all that, and had to eat on the run. No, there's nothing good that ever comes from a convenience store food. So I cannot believe that Buc-ee's has got something edible.
Moving on, Ross Jacobs, Runyon not above average, Illuminor is fairly decent. Illuminor probably plays tackle. Evan Neal will slide inside to guard. That would be interesting. And I think with in relation to Saquon, um, he's just basically comparing and contrasting. Would you rather go play for Dayball yelling at him, paying a lot in taxes, playing for New York, right? Even though they're technically playing in New Jersey, I don't know if their tax rate is still really high relative to Pennsylvania, but or you can go play with Hurts and AJ Brown, and Howie takes care of his guys, pays them money. So like, yeah, it's a no-brainer. I mean, if I'm Saquon, I want to get out of New York, go play for a Super Bowl contender. And he went, I think he went to Penn, so he might, he's definitely familiar with that state. Yeah. Oh yeah, Penn State.
Well,
sorry.
In the famous words of Joe Shane, you're gonna call me back and give us a chance, right? Or you're not interested. Like, he talked himself out of it in the same sentence. Like, if you're trying to close the deal, you stay positive. You're like, you're gonna call us, right? Like, I'm counting on you. You're gonna call, even though the whole premise of that was ridiculous. You could at least sound confident. He was like, you're gonna call us back and give us a chance, right? You're not gonna not give us a chance. Like, you're not gonna ghost me, was basically a statement. And then Saquon gave him some one-word grunt and moving on. It's like, man, how does that guy not know there was no chance in that conversation? And I would have been like, please don't film me having any conversations.
Yeah, it's
and
weird.
I saw a very brief part where he was talking to one of the guys from Carolina about trading Brian Burns.
Yeah.
And then, like, both of these guys are the worst. This cannot be the way a conversation goes.
It was unbelievable, RC. I think that guy in Carolina, Dan Morgan or whatever, him and Shane are tight. They're buddies. They're actually very close. So
that would make sense because they both seem like morons at their job from my 1 minute clip.
Yeah. I don't think either of them were the best GMs in the world.
I thought that Dan Morgan was supposed to be some genius, everybody was saying. And then I was on saw a clip of him. Maybe it was more Shane was the moron and Morgan just happened to be there. So he's getting guilt by association. But I think Morgan was saying stuff that maybe he's often Burns, like he's being silly about it.
It was weird, RC. The way that he went about it was like, hey, would you give us 2 1s for Burns, right? And, eventually the Giants paid 2 2s for Burns. But if I'm Shane...
Did he start out with 2 1s and then went, how about just a 1? Did he talk himself down all in the same 1 minute? I think that's what I caught.
I can't recall.
He didn't start out by saying, how about a first round pick? And then if he would have saw a reaction, he's like, but it's going to cost you 2 first round picks. I think he said, would you give me 2 1s? And then when it was laughed at, he was like 5 seconds later, he's like, how about a 1? Like, if he would have just let him keep talking, he would have said, how about a 7th rounder?
Well, but like the thing that I didn't get in all of that, RC, is if Shane is interested in Burns, which he was obviously acquired for him, why are you kind of like showing your hand there? Like, if I'm actually interested in Burns and I'm negotiating, my follow-up to Morgan would be like, yeah, you want 2 1s and you want me to pay him $30 million a year, buddy? Like, come on. Like, you could have I think that you could have easily talked more. Morgan clearly revealed in that, will you give us 2 1s, in that statement, that he's trying to get rid of Burns. That's my interpretation. You're trying to offload Burns. In the back of my mind, you got to act disinterested in acquiring Burns, but immediately Shane jumps on it and starts negotiating. Like, that just shows you he has zero tactic, business savviness. Like, it was just, blew my mind.
I agree.
Anyways, Tom Finn 2018 RC. Did I read in one of your write-ups that you are or were at one point a financial analyst? That's what I do for a living, modeling and forecasting type, not the Wall Street type.
Yep, I was a area financial manager / analyst for a geographic territory of multiple locations, and it was more strategic, analyzing deals, seeing what their projected profitability would be over whatever the term of the deal was, and also going through P&Ls, which I was a master at. Like I suck at just about everything, but going through P&Ls, creating a business plan at the big corporation that I worked for, and analyzing mega deals. That was my wheelhouse. I wish they would have taken everything else about my job and given it to somebody else, because I had to do a lot of operational things as well. But that taught me, I learned more in that than I ever learned in school. So I'm grateful for it. But I'm not a mathematical genius. I'm just really good with basic numbers. If you got a dollar sign in it, I understand it pretty quickly. If you have letters in algebra, then I'm lost. I don't want any part of it.
Okay. Then the next comments are from Ross, just reacting to Lombardi's list. Long story short, he was shocked about Stingley being Lombardi's top corner as well, which RCU agree with. Let's scroll down back to Tom Finn 2018. Who else but the Jags deal away a shutdown corner before he even gets his second contract? Ramsey. So,
well, when you were first reading that and it was first coming across, I didn't look down and see the Ramsey part because I was moving things on my screen to catch up to where you were. And when I was hearing that and I saw the first sentence of that, I thought he was going to say Darius Williams. They just let Darius Williams walk out the door and walk right back to the Rams, who it really had some nice numbers, coverage wise. Those can be deceiving, but on paper, Darius Williams had a great year last year. He's a really good corner, and he just walked out the door on the Jags.
yeah.
And I don't know what the heck they got to replace him. I think Jerry and Jones, a third-round pick, who's all right out of Florida. But if they're wanting to turn around that team, they're sure to have a funny way of doing it by letting their best cornerback go. Just walk away.
Yep. And the next comments are Ross reacting to the Mike Lombardi safety list. RC, you were talking about how Kyle Hamilton, and you were going back and forth with Ross on that one, and Ross had him rated pretty high, and Hamilton looked pretty good in Baltimore's scheme last year. So we'll see if he continues doing that in the future. But let's go down to Tom Finn. I've had Harrison Smith on my team since he was a rookie. I know he's past his prime, but he's still one of my favorites. Just talking about top safeties.
Yep. He's probably maybe a Hall of Famer. Harrison Smith might wind up being a Hall of Famer.
Yeah. Yeah.
I'd have to think about that and look at it, and it seems like everybody who had two good seasons is a Hall of Famer anymore. But Harrison Smith has played. I bet Harrison Smith's probably like 35 years old. He's still getting after it.
Yeah.
And he wasn't injured much in his career. He's probably got some hellacious tallies in his career because he's had at least 10 years, 3, 6, 9, 12. 12 years. He's 35 years old.
Yeah. And then
34 interceptions in his career.
He was really good. I don't know if he's Hall of Fame good, at least at the safety position. I'd have to really think about that. But
he's been voted a top 100 player 6 times in the last 8 years.
Wow.
He's 6-time Pro Bowler, 1-time first team All Pro.
Okay. Then RC, I think scrolling down, Ross was just talking about how um, Jets tried to trade for Devontae probably in the past. Raiders said no, but most likely they didn't offer Garrett Wilson in that deal, so couldn't get it done.
Well, I'm sure it was some real cinematic negotiation tactics. The Raiders were probably like, or the Jets were like, would you be interested in trading us Devontae Adams? Raiders like, no. Okay.
Hang up the phone. Okay.
If you're ever interested in trading them, just let me know. Okay.
Swear, man. RC, Harvard Business School should like use Hard Knocks or whatever. All business schools should use Hard Knocks and how like not to do negotiations. But anyways, Frozen
I don't
Gaming.
know if Harvard is the place. I think a lot of the problems are coming from Harvard.
Frozen Gaming in a tough 2-team 12 keeper league. I have Chase and Henry and the first pick. Best available is Saquon, Harrison, and Garrett Wilson. Which way should I go? And he flopped out. As I read it, I'm like 2-team 12 keeper. 12-team 2 keeper, which makes a lot more sense. RC, what do you think?
So he's keeping Chase and Henry, which is another sign of the respect that the populace has over the critics on Derrick Henry, because a couple months ago when it was all analyst driven, Derrick Henry would not have been thought of to be a keeper, top 20, essentially a top 24 player. So by keeping him, he's saying that UFC is saying that he is a top 24 player, which is wise. The best available, so we're past the top 24 players. The best available is Saquon, Marvin Harrison, that's a big fat no, and Garrett Wilson. So it would be between Saquon and Garrett Wilson for me. I'd have to know if this was PPR, if you start 3 wide receivers, like is there something that, because they're pretty close, nice assets, you can't in theory go wrong with either. I could scare you about either one, I could make you excited about either one, but I don't know if there's a thing that tips it one way or the other because of your scoring system or because of how many players you get to start at certain positions. So, but it would be between Saquon and Garrett Wilson for me, and Marvin Harrison would never in a million years be in that debate. Whatever you do, don't take Marvin Harrison is my best advice.
All right.
At that level.
And
Actually, let me just throw right in there. Because Marvin Harrison may actually, so you've got the number 1 pick. Can you trade? And they just chimed in, half PPR. So a normal setup. So it still kind of keeps a Saquon versus Wilson argument alive. But now I got to remember, this is keeper. So I get why Marvin Harrison would be in this discussion, because that's like having the number 1 rookie pick. People would want to get their hands on him to make him a keeper into the future. So I get why Harrison's in this discussion. Harrison would be my pick if I could not pick him and trade him in advance. If I could trade this pick in advance because people were hot to trot after Marvin Harrison, if you could get a lot of other assets or things, that would be a route I would investigate. If that is not possible, then I would probably choose between Saquon and Wilson, because everybody loves Saquon. He's got trade value, Everybody loves Garrett Wilson. He's got trade value. If you're not that hyped on them, you'd be able to move them. If you like either one of them, if they're one of your favorite players, go with them and have fun for the season. But I would only take Harrison if I knew that I could just flip him into something bigger.
RC, just thinking about it and knowing the public sentiment on Harrison, I think that's probably where I would lean if I was Frozen Gaming. Take Harrison because it is a keeper league, like you said, and try to flip, because I feel like the asset you can get in return for Harrison will be better than Saquon or Garrett Wilson.
You got to do it before he starts playing games, because that's going to be like a new car driving off the lot.
Yep.
The depreciation meter is going to start dropping on it the second you start getting further away from the dealership after having signed the deal. So it's not something that you have to take them and then 24 hours later you better hurry and trade. But you don't want to wane around and just just get a peek and see if Harrison's all that and all that. His supreme value is before he even gets revealed. It's the rookie hype bubble. I would try to trade him before he even played a game, before he played a preseason game. I don't want him to. There's nothing he could do in the preseason or in the regular season that can meet or top what people already think about him. He's already at the peak price of his entire history in fantasy football. So I am trading that if I know that I'm going to be able to trade that, and it's an active trading league, and certainly people are going to be after him.
Yeah, and the cool part about it is, RC, if you earmark that you're going to trade Harrison, you could kind of see how the draft shakes out, and if you feel like you're weaker at receiver or running back or whatever, then you can use Harrison to fill that hole too. So you could just see how the draft comes to you and then flip Harrison accordingly.
Yeah. That's a great point as well. Because if you take it in terms of like a 0 through 10 scale with Marvin Harrison, so he's already priced for perfection. He's already priced at a 10. If you go to trade him, you're going to get a value of 10 or 11 or 12 because people are going to be so hyped up to get him. So if Marvin Harrison fulfills everybody's dreams, you're going to have traded him for something great. I mean, this is not a player to go trade. You get Harrison and then you go and you get two decent players in return for you get Harrison, you go trade him for Amon-Ra St. Brown, you go trade him for Justin Jefferson, you go trade him for something hardcore, and then you might be able to get something hardcore and a little bit more, or maybe just straight up hardcore. So even if Harrison goes on to be great, you will have gotten a great thing too. What I don't want anybody to do with Marvin Harrison is to settle for two lesser pieces and go, ooh, I got Rachaad White and Brandon Ayuk for Harrison. Thank God I got rid of Harrison. Yes, we are hyped to trade this Marvin Harrison asset, but it's an asset that's up so high, kind of like Bijan Robinson last year, that it's so fully priced on the best outcome. It's so fully priced that you should be getting at least one superstar thing in return, not draft picks, but superstar thing in return. And then if Harrison goes on to be really good, you didn't really miss out on anything because you got something already established good like Justin Jefferson or Jamar Chase, or you already got Jamar Chase, Amon-Ra St. Brown, whatever you consider that elite piece of the puzzle to get in exchange for Harrison, and then maybe some more because of Harrison being a rookie and the player that you're getting might have a little bit of age to him, like 3 or 4 or 5 years in the league. So I'm looking to move Harrison for multiple things. The bare minimum, one elite player straight up, if that's about the only thing I can get. But I'm looking to get an elite player plus something, because there are some people that are way overheated to get Marvin Harrison. I don't know who they'll be in your league, but at least half of your league would kill themselves to get their hands on Marvin Harrison. And maybe you'll get Marvin Harrison, to Andrew's point, when you draft your team, you put Marvin Harrison with some other little name that you're not so pumped on, but that has a name, and then you can go get an elite player plus 2 other things that are undervalued. There's a lot of ways you can go when you possess Harrison, and you're going to go, but with the thought process that you're going to trade him, not dump him, but you're going to go through the exercise and get a lot of people. You're not going to be Joe Shane and call up and kind of like, oh, what do you give me for Marvin Harrison? You're going to get a lot of people interested. You're going to talk about, you have to come up with a reason why you're willing to trade Marvin Harrison. You don't offer him, you make people come to you somehow and ask about Marvin Harrison and say, hey, I'll trade anybody if the price is right. Let's talk about anybody you want to talk about. But there are Marvin Harrison lovers and then some out there. So that may be the best way to squeeze the maximum value out of that pick, is to get Harrison. Like if you got Harrison and you traded him for this is half PPR, and you traded him for, let's just say Christian McCaffrey. Let's just put that on the table. You traded him straight up for that. That's like getting 3 keepers with your first 3 picks, because obviously McCaffrey is a keeper level player. So if the worst thing you walk out of it with is an elite superstar player in return, Harrison is not going to give you those kind of returns. McCaffrey is, Amon-Ra, Chase type of guys are going to. So worst case, you're gonna get a great player and watch Harrison not be as great a player. But you might be able to get a great player and then some, or you may be able to expand the deal where it's 2 for 3, 3 for 4, and you're trading a lot of hype and getting a lot of assets in return. So if that works in your league, if you see that, it's a pretty active trading league, that's probably going to be the best way to go.
Yep. Okay. Good stuff, RC. I think we're all wrapped up. Anything you want to leave the audience with before we sign off?
I thought we didn't have much to talk about tonight because there wasn't much going on in football, and that this would take about an hour or so. So we always find a way to give and give and give. Normal flow to this week. Updates on all of the rankings as we keep dialing those in, and I'm auditing different things and looking through more undrafted free agents, just doing a lot of tidy work to get ready for next week and later this week, but especially next week. All hell's going to break loose when they start hitting training camp. And then I'm just going to be on my post gathering all the information and see who's rising and who's falling and how we can best leverage it. So I don't know what's going to happen in the next 2 weeks. I just know it's the starter pistol will be shot, and I'm going to be on that wall drinking coffee, looking out with my binoculars, trying to find the best values for the preseason. So it's all going to start next week. My personal life ends next Monday.
Well,
until February.
Take a breather, because you're going to have a long way to go, RC. You need to rest up before the marathon. Anyways, thank you all for tuning in. We'll be back to you guys next week. Check out RC's site, FFMet.